Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again.
You're streaming with the Fantasy Follow. Week 11 of fantasy football starts tonight. We're getting started with a special TFF Live Thursday pregame show, and it starts right now. It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is the TFF Live Thursday pregame show. We're getting you started for Week 11. The topic of tonight's show, we got trade thoughts for you. We got plenty of content for you talking about players that you should take a look at as you head towards your playoff run with the best matchups, possible trade acquisitions for your teams at the running back spot and the wide receiver spot. So we're here for that with your content. Also, as always, we're here for your live chat and your questions throughout the show. That's what we're here for. That's what we love to do. So free to drop us a chat. Let us know if you got any questions for us. Even if we are talking other content, we will get to those chats as soon as possible. I do want to get to the content quickly today for the benefit of all the people watching live and on replay, but we got a couple early chats that are in play for tonight's game, so we want to get to those first, starting off with Bill Romanowski, as I always say, our most famous viewer, NFL legend. Bill Romanowski is here. Bill says, good evening, and Bill's got the first question of the night for us. He wants to know Kyle Pitts or Chase Claypool, and obviously Kyle Pitts in tonight's game, so we want to get to that question right away. Let's put some numbers up on the screen, starting at the tight end spot. Of course, Kyle Pitts tonight playing for Atlanta against New England. So fantasy points allowed to the tight end spot by the New England Patriots, 30th, third fewest. That is the matchup number. Wide receiver-wise for Chase Claypool, Pittsburgh playing on the road at the LA Chargers, Sunday Night Football, 8:20. Let's see, where do the LA Chargers fall on this list? Second fewest. Neither one of these are great matchups. I don't dislike Chase Claypool going forward. I don't know if we know for sure, and perhaps you guys know, if the situation with Roethlisberger is already set where he's off of protocols, or if we're still looking at possibly Mason Rudolph. I think that impacts your decision here. I think if there's any thought that it could possibly still be Rudolph at this point, I think that puts us in a definite here for Kyle Pitts. But even if we did know that Roethlisberger was going to clear protocols, I still think there's reason enough to go with Pitts here in that Atlanta offense, even though the matchups are both bad. So there's really no edge there. However, we've got no Hayden Hurst at the tight end spot for Atlanta tonight. That makes a difference. We've got no Cordell Patterson for Atlanta tonight. That makes a difference. All of those targets have got to go somewhere. Not that Hayden Hurst probably wasn't the most on the targets, but certainly for Patterson, there are a lot of targets to go somewhere. Do we think they're going to automatically go to Mike Davis? No, I don't. Based on the way Mike Davis has been used all year, even though Patterson is not playing, I'm still not all that high on Mike Davis tonight. Obviously, Atlanta is going to want to throw the ball. Those targets have got to go somewhere. I feel like, Bill, this is kind of similar to what we talked about last week. For me, this is a flex type situation, and normally I don't look to having two tight ends to be able to flex. I'm assuming, again, that you're in this situation where this would be two tight ends in your lineup. But I think that Kyle Pitts is a very reasonable choice based on all of that volume that you would think he's going to see tonight. Again, the matchups for neither are great, but based on the potential uncertainty, again, I did not research to see if Ben Roethlisberger had cleared protocols or not yet. Bill, you might know the answer to that already. If you do, that might help you make this decision. But I think even so, I think it's reasonable to look Kyle Pitts' way here, even though I don't necessarily dislike Chase Claypool. Hope that helps you out there, Bill. And then we've got Rob Navarro here. Rob Navarro, one of our regulars, says, yo, and I say yo right back to you, Rob. Welcome. Bill says, hi, Joe and Rob. And Rob says, hello, Bill. And then Rob's got a question. How do you feel about Damian Harris tonight in PPR? I feel like Damian Harris, whether or not it's PPR or not, I think if there is one running back that you could trust most all of the time for New England, it is Harris. Obviously, we saw Ramondre Stevenson play great last week. Do I think that means that he's going to cut into Damian Harris's work? No, I don't. Harris was in concussion protocol. It's not like this is some injury that obviously we don't want to see anyone injured or in concussion protocol at all. But if you're talking about a different type of a soft tissue injury or something like that, concussions are different. Once they clear from the protocol, they're able to put him into the lineup, and I don't know why there'd be any reason to think that he's going to lose work because of that. Obviously, Brandon Bolden is still there. If anything, others in that backfield would seem to get some of the work in terms of the pass catching, and it's Harris in terms of running the ball. If you look at the matchup in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back spot, Atlanta falls in fifth. Number 5 on the left side of your screen there. So obviously it is a good matchup. I don't think there's any reason to stray. I don't think Ramondre Stevenson impacts you. So, for those players that had played Stevenson last week, I don't feel like he is a start this week. I think it's going to go right back to Harris. Again, the New England backfield is one of those that's difficult to kind of figure out sometimes. But if anything, we've seen Damian Harris, be tremendous all season long. I just don't see any reason why they wouldn't continue to go to him. At this point, he is running back 21 for the season, averaging 12.2 in a PPR format. I think Harris is a fine start. The matchup is good, and he's been great all season long. And if you take a look at his volume, which I will do that real quick over here, that he's had in recent games, not taking into account this last game, obviously But the previous games to that, the previous 4 games, his rush attempts 18, 14, 23, and 15. Only a couple of targets along the way, but he's only had 2 games this year under double digits, and the last 5 in a row, double digits, 10 or more. And those fantasy points in order: 10, 18, 25, 14, and 10. So I feel like there are, based on the matchup and based on what Harris has done all season long, can weird things happen? I'm sure. Again, keep an eye on your reports to see if there are any reports that I haven't seen that make you aware of something else to be hesitant. But I don't see any reason really to be all that concerned with Harris. I would expect him to be just fine as the feature back in that offense. Hope that helps you out there, Rob. And if you decide to go with Rob there, I hope that he or decide to go with Damian. Perhaps you're playing yourself tonight, Rob. Put yourself in that lineup and get you going for some fantasy points. Bill Romanowski says, great, and indeed helps. Thank you. And let's see if there are follow-ups here from Rob. So no, I will thank you, Rob, as well. Lee Shakur is here. I see a couple of questions here. I see Aladdin, but I do want to get in and start out with our content first, and then I will roll back to the next chats in order. I want to kind of go back and forth a little bit on this tonight so that we can roll with some of this content here, especially given the fact that we got game time about half an hour away. So let's take a look at our trade thoughts is the topic for tonight, getting towards the trade deadline in most of your leagues. So what we did for you tonight is we put together some players that you may be able to go out and acquire in your leagues that would have beneficial fantasy matchups in your playoff time. And that would be the reasoning for going after these players in terms of trade. So I put together running backs and wide receivers tonight that you can look to see if they're out there in some situations where you might be able to make offers that could give you an edge as you look towards your playoff run. So let's start with the running back spot. And I kind of ordered these in order of how valuable I feel like these players would be. It kind of jumps around a little bit, and some of these players are going to be tougher to acquire than others, and this is one of those right at the top of this list. DeAndre Swift from the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Swift has been great this year. If you were going to try to acquire a player like this, you certainly would have to offer a very good deal for whoever has him on their roster currently. Swift currently RB5 for the year, averaging 18.0 points. And again, this is all about what do these players have in line for them in the playoff weeks. This is what gives them the value that we're talking about in terms of a trade acquisition. In the weeks 15, 16, and 17, as you see on your graphic there, Arizona, Atlanta, and Seattle. Fantasy points allowed to the running back spot by those teams. Arizona at 24, so that is 9th fewest. But then Atlanta at 5 and Seattle at 2. And if perhaps you're playing into week 18, you've got Green Bay at 22nd. But for sure, weeks 16 and 17, we know most of your playoff runs are either 15, 16, 17, or 16, 17. So if you are a player who has players in 16, 17, two tremendous matchups from a player who has been very good all season long. Certainly, again, a DeAndre Swift is a top name. Might be difficult to go out and acquire that sort of a player, but I've got him number one in terms of running backs to take a look at in terms of a trade. Next up, I've got David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears. Montgomery is currently RB42, obviously has missed some time, averaging 11.6 this year. And in the playoff stretch, Montgomery, the 4 games at the end of his season, Minnesota, Seattle, New York Giants, and then Minnesota again in week 18. The fantasy points allowed by those teams, Minnesota at 11th most, Seattle at 2nd most, the Giants at 7th most, and then obviously Minnesota again in week 18 at 11. So again, a really good run of games. David Montgomery, a player who may be able to be acquired, based on the fact that he's missed so much time. You might have a team who has the ability to make that swap. So I've got David Montgomery on this list. Next up, I've got Darrell Henderson from the LA Rams. Henderson currently RB12, averaging 15.5 for the year. And again, looking at the playoff run for Henderson, Seattle, Minnesota, Baltimore, and then in week 18, it's San Francisco. And the numbers for those teams, Seattle 2nd most, Minnesota 11th most, Baltimore 12th most, San Francisco 14th most. So basically, regardless of when your playoffs are, this is a guy who has a lot of value during that run. So Darrell Henderson, one of our trade thoughts for this week as we approach the trade deadline. Next up, I've got James Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Robinson currently running back 14 for the year, averaging 16.0 fantasy points. Obviously, there have been a little bit of injury concerns for Robinson, but if he is to be healthy moving forward, again, his playoff run, Houston, the New York Jets, the New England Patriots, and then in week 18, it's the Indianapolis Colts, which is not a great matchup, But in 15, 16, and 17, Houston currently allowing the 10th most fantasy points to running backs. The New York Jets, number 1, and the New England Patriots are at 15. So again, a nice run of games leading up to your playoff. The championship in week 17, not quite as great if that is when your championship is. Still middle of the road, but certainly the 2 weeks before that are 2 great matchups to take a look at. Rounding out our running backs to talk about, we've got Melvin Gordon from the Denver Broncos. We've actually got 2 players from the Denver Broncos with the exact same run of games here. Gordon currently RB15 right now, averaging 12.7 points. Again, a really nice run here. Cincinnati, Las Vegas, and the LA Chargers. And then in week 18, it's Kansas City. And the numbers there are Cincinnati allowing 6th most fantasy points to the running back spot. Las Vegas, 9th. The LA Chargers 4th, and then Kansas City is at 18. So again, these are players that have nice matchups during your playoffs. That's when you want the good matchups, so you can have some nice games to make your way towards a championship. Again, Melvin Gordon, not the only one in play there for Denver. The other one is Javonte Williams. Same run of games. We've seen them basically splitting the workload. I don't know why there's any reason for that to change before playoff time, but either one of these players is viable. And again, some of these players that we talk about will take more than others for you to be able to acquire them. But a player like a Gordon or a Williams who is splitting the time, you might be able to get for a little bit lesser price and perhaps has some impact once you get to your playoff time. So that is our run of running backs to talk about in terms of trade thoughts, playoff players that you could acquire with great matchups towards the end of the season to help you towards your championships. All right, we got wide receivers to talk about as well, but we will jump back over the chats next. And before we get to the chats, I do see that for whatever reason, my camera is not focused very well tonight, so let me see if I can work on that real quick. I'm not even sure if I can alter that once we're already live. It might be I might have to put up another screen here. Let's see what I can do. Can I even do anything about that? Probably not. All right. Well, here's what we're gonna do real quick. This is what we'll do before we get to the chats. We'll put up a quick promo. This will allow me to fix my camera, and we will promo our 6 picks game. For those of you, this is our thumbnail from week 10 as I try to fix this camera off camera. Keep an eye out for our 6 picks games as we go along. This is a season-long game for you, the viewers, to play in. No cost or anything like that. Just basically your chance to show off your fantasy football skills. Again, it's a 6 fantasy matchups that occur within the same games. If you check out last week's thumbnail or last week's video or any of the others, you'll get the idea. It's really simple. PPR scoring, you pick the winners to all 6 of the matchups. We keep the standings all season long. And we close out that picks at 1 Eastern time on Sunday. We have not updated the standings yet from the previous week, but this is what we had in week 9. It was Cash Money Wilson and Bobby Shmurda who led the way. Hopefully my camera stays a little more focused now. They were the leaders in terms of the weekly best for that week and the overall leaderboard with a minimum of 3 weeks. It was Bansko leading the way, Cash Money Wilson, and as we've already heard from tonight, Bill Romanowski rounding out those leaders. So check out that 6 picks game. And let's get back to the chats before we go back to our other content for the night. Let me see where I left off here. I think Lee Shakur was up next. Lee Shakur says, hey, and I say, hey, Lee, nice to have you with us tonight. You say thoughts on Deante Johnson rest of season. Well, perhaps the previous segment there answered those thoughts. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I talked about running backs. That's a sneak preview then. Deante Johnson is on my list of players that I think are worthy to take a look at in terms of trying to acquire via trade. Rest of season, I think Deante Johnson is a fine player the rest of the way through here. I would expect him to continue to be the target leader in terms of the wide receivers in that offense. Obviously, hopefully Ben Roethlisberger, hopefully he is okay with protocols and everything like that and healthy. And once he is back, I think that certainly helps you out more than Mason Rudolph does. But Deante Johnson currently wide receiver 22 for the season. So that's right on the borderline of a WR2. I think he will stay in that range. I don't think that you'll see any of the other players on his team kind of challenge him. I think there are some players down there who could possibly move up the list, but I think he, again, has the opportunity to move up the list as well. We'll talk about it in a little bit when we talk about the wide receiver players to target by a trade, but he's got a couple of nice games in the playoff section. Tennessee in week 15, number 1 in terms of fantasy points to wide receivers. Cleveland in week 17 for your fantasy football championship, currently allowing the 9th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. And there may be some, the matchups along the way in between there. Certainly I didn't research all the games, but I do think that Deante Johnson is still going to be one of those players who you can expect to be there for you as the season goes forward. So I think there are plenty of players that you would rather start him above the rest of this way, Lee. I hope that helps you out there. I do think you're going to be in fine shape with that guy on your roster. And if you don't have him yet, I think he's a player that you can go out and look to add to bolster your run towards a fantasy football championship. Bill Romanowski says hi to Lee there. Lee says hi back to Bill. And next up, we got A. Aladdin, one of our regulars back with us. A. Aladdin, welcome back. You've got Ramondre Stevenson or Alex Collins or Mike Davis or Devin Singletary. A lot of stuff to think about here. Let's put up some matchups to the running back spot, see if that helps you out there. Let's start with the first part of your question here. To me, Stevenson tonight, if you've got a better option, I stay away from Stevenson. I know he had a great game last week, but I don't necessarily think that means he automatically takes the volume away from Damian Harris. Perhaps it is some sort of a timeshare still, but certainly the lesser amount of volume there makes a difference. The matchup is pretty good. Atlanta, number 5 in terms of fantasy points to the running back spot. We talked about that a little bit already. When you compare that to the other guys on your list, Seattle, home against Arizona, 425 on Sunday. Arizona currently sits where? 24th, 9th fewest. Matchup not quite as good there. As well, again, whether or not Chris Carson plays makes a big difference in Alex Collins's volume. Clearly, it looked like Chris Collins was close to playing last week, and then he didn't. And then looking at the volume that Collins has seen, 10 rushes last week, just 1 target, 10 the week before, has not had double digits since week 6. Those factors combined with Chris Carson, too many Carsons here to go with, I think would lead me to stray away from Collins, which leads you towards these other 2 guys. And this is where your decision basically lies this week. Mike Davis, again, for Atlanta, tonight's game against New England. New England currently at 15th most fantasy points to the running back spot. So right in the middle, not a terrible matchup. And then Buffalo, Devin Singletary. Buffalo home against Indianapolis, 1 o'clock on Sunday. Indianapolis currently the second fewest fantasy points, as you see on the left side of your screen, to the running back spot. In addition, you've always got the Zach Moss, Devin Singletary thing going on there. I would probably always prefer the Moss side of that because he is the guy that they seem to trust at the goal line over Singletary. Doesn't mean that Singletary can't have nice games. It just means that there probably is a better chance on a regular basis to get that from Moss. I think that lands us on Mike Davis here. Without Cordero Patterson, I think Davis is a reasonable start this week. I will say I am a little bit worried, and I talked about this during the waiver wire video. In terms of Davis's production, I don't know what to make of the Wayne Gallman factor from last week. Gallman, 15 carries last week. Where's my waiver wire sheet that I had that written down? 15 carries for 55 yards, I believe it was. I don't know. I have week 11 here. There it is. Too many sheets, too much research. 2 targets, 1 catch, 21 yards last week for Gallman. Obviously, that was a huge blowout. So I don't know if that means that Davis was just out of there because they wanted to keep him from having any injury concerns in a game that was out of reach, or if they're looking Gallman's way. I mean, to me, like, that's enough to worry me if you have a better option than Davis this week. But what you're looking at in terms of players that you've asked about, I don't know that any of them are a better option. Because if it's not a Gallman thing, then you expect Davis to pretty much have all the volume without Cordero Patterson. So that is a little bit of a question mark. And unfortunately, I don't know how we're going to answer that question. It's not all that much different than the question between Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. Do we see it? We could see a surprise on either side of that. But just going with the data that we have, Mike Davis, you would think has been their main. He hasn't, I guess, been their main guy because clearly that's been Patterson. But going into the season, Davis was expected to be the main guy in terms of running the ball. The matchup is not terrible. The Singletary matchup is not better. The Stevenson matchup is better, but again, I don't know if I trust the volume there enough. And between Stevenson and Davis, I would think, although both have questions, it seems like the better side of those questions would be Davis. I would be less expecting that this all of a sudden turns into a Wayne Gallman day than it does a Damian Harris day. I think that's enough to land me on Mike Davis. Hope that helps you out, Aladdin, and hope that you are able to get whichever guys you pick there, guys that will go ahead and crush it for you and get you that W in week 11. Bill Romanowski jumps in, just trying to get an edge. I'm tied for first and playing the guy I'm tied with. Oh, interesting there. Well, I'll tell you this, Bill. Take a look at your matchups and make sure that you're not sharing anybody here. The 2 quarterbacks are Matt Ryan and obviously Roethlisberger, probably not sharing either one of those. But take a look, see if there are any other factors. Perhaps one of the defenses is in play. Any reason to either build up variance or take that variance away. And you say that your daughter, Bill, you say my daughter's party is Sunday, so I won't be here. No problem, Bill. It's all right. We're glad to have you anytime you can make the shows. You could say I can start 2, Saquon, A.J. Dillon, David Montgomery, or Elijah Mitchell. Let's put up some matchups here for you, Bill. Let's see. Let's go through. How close are we to game time? About 15 minutes. We'll go through a few more chats, and then we'll probably get the wide receivers when we're talking about trades at the end here, closer to game time, so that I can make sure and get all of your questions in. So for those of you that are watching on replay, you'll expect us to get back to that wide receiver trade targets after we get through the rest of the chats. Let's take a look at some matchups, Bill, here for you. In these games, in the order that you listed them. The New York Giants on the road, Tampa Bay, Monday Night Football. Tough being that the night is the Monday night game because it does seem that Saquon likely plays, but you never know the way it's been going so far for him. Regardless, Tampa Bay sits at number 25, 8th fewest fantasy points to the running back spot. A.J. Dillon for the Green Bay Packers, I think that I like a lot on the road against Minnesota. 1 o'clock on Sunday, the matchup numbers say Minnesota number 11, just outside of the green. So good matchup there for Dillon. You expect him to get all of the volume. David Montgomery for Chicago. Again, you expect him to get all of the volume. Home against Baltimore, 1 o'clock on Sunday. And the matchup there is number 12. So again, another good matchup there. And then Elijah Mitchell for San Francisco. That is a road game against Jacksonville, 1 o'clock on Sunday. Jacksonville sits at 13. So right in the same area. I would be a little bit more hesitant on Mitchell because of the injury. I know that they say that they are hopeful that he plays, but with San Francisco, you never know when they say one thing, when they're going to do something else. And Jeff Wilson looms there back in the lineup. I think it's very reasonable that although they say, well, we hope we have him, they could just decide, well, guess what? We got Wilson, Elijah Mitchell a little banged up. Let's give him a week and let him rest. I would be worried about that in terms of playing Mitchell if you have other options that are viable. And you certainly do, Bill. I like Dillon and Montgomery out of these guys. Saquon, I will say that I haven't read the latest report to see what is the actual situation on his status. I would think he would be all right. I don't know how that works out. I think Saquon, obviously is a top-notch player, so it certainly is possible that you could slot Saquon in above either one of those two guys. But I think if you were all worried about Saquon potentially not being fully 100% or splitting time or any of those things, I think you've got two very good starts there to go with in Dillon and Montgomery. I would not be feeling hesitant on either one of those guys. I think Dillon's going to be a plenty good start with Aaron Jones injured for these couple of weeks. Obviously, unfortunately, with that injury to Jones, I think Dillon gets all the volume. I think Montgomery gets all the volume there. I think both of those guys are in line for nice days. So I think you're in good shape, Bill, whichever way that you end up having to go there with those players. Hope that helps you out and hope that gets you that edge to break that tie for first place. Up next, we got Zechariah's Aviation Channel. Welcome. Looks like you might be a new viewer, so glad to have you with us tonight. You say here, got a few for you. Let me mention real quick, all of you that are new viewers or those of you that are regulars, we thank all of you that have been with us right along the way. If you're new, we welcome you to the stream, and we hope that you do enjoy our content. Either way, feel free to drop us a like. And if you are enjoying our content, of course, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel. The likes and the subscribes really do help out the channel a ton. So appreciate the opportunity to let you guys all know about that. And again, we thank all of you for being a part of our shows. All right, Zechariah, you got a question here. You said, got a few for you. Gronk or Pitts, Latavius or Stevenson, Kyler or Hurts, Shepard or Claypool, or Jarvis or Kirk. All right, let's put some matchups up. Some of these are going to be instincts. Some of these we can go with matchups as well. I always like to put the numbers up because to me, data means a lot in fantasy football here. Rob Gronkowski for the Tampa Bay Bucks against the Giants. The left side of your screen, fantasy points a lot of the tight end spot. Giants at 17. Kyle Pitts against New England. New England is at 30. Not as good of a matchup, but as always with these decisions, I always talk about four factors: ability, volume, matchup, and game script. In that order, I think that Kyle Pitts, in the absence of Hayden Hurst and with no Cordell Patterson, they are going to need someone to throw to tonight. And I think Kyle Pitts fits the bill. So I think that definitely at least gives him an edge in volume. At the same time, Gronkowski, while it does look like he's healthy, obviously it hasn't been going well in terms of injury concerns for Gronkowski this year. And he is a player who has had some trouble with injuries in the past. So I would feel a little bit less comfortable in the first week without seeing Gronkowski get through a full game. So that makes me land on Pitts for that first choice. Let's look at the next choice here. Latavius Murray or Ramondre Stevenson. This is a tough one because either one of these two guys I don't know is going to get the bulk load of the work. If we look at the matchups, Chicago is the matchup for Murray. They are currently allowing on the left side of your screen there 17th most fantasy points to the running back spot. Stevenson, we talked about already. Atlanta is the matchup there. That is 5. I think given the fact that I wouldn't expect either one of these guys to be the 1A in the backfield in either of their games. I think it's going to be Devonte Freeman for the Ravens. Certainly, since they have released Le'Veon Bell, that does open up a little bit more opportunity for Murray. But again, keep an eye on your, I guess you kind of got to have that answer tonight because I was going to say keep an eye on your notifications, but Latavius Murray has been a little banged up. So I'm going to call that up real quick on my screen and just read the information and see if that helps us at all. He does still have a questionable tag. And here is the note from Yahoo that says, Murray was limited in practice, trending toward questionable on Friday. Devonte Freeman's reign as head of the backfield may be over. The question will be if it devolves into a full-blown committee or if Murray will be installed as the main cog again, right? That's kind of the thought here. It says, this is what Yahoo says. Unless Murray does not play, it will be hard to trust either of them as more than a flex play against the Bears, given how poor the Ravens' run game has been this year. I like Yahoo for their reports. So I sometimes question some of their they do give good thoughts, but sometimes some of their projections I end up questioning. That's more of a thought than a projection, so not necessarily as bad there. I would agree that you don't know exactly who's going to land where, but given the fact that you don't really know for sure, if you have to make this choice between these two players, and choosing Latavius would give you a real issue if he didn't play, then it kind of forces you to go Stevenson here, and you're going to kind of have to hope that he gets enough volume or gets kind of that touchdown that makes his day again. I don't really like Stevenson's chances of getting a bulk load of the volume tonight, but you may have to think about going that way because there are so many question marks there for Latavius. All right, Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts in terms of the matchups here. Murray for Arizona against Seattle, 425 on Sunday. Seattle on the left side of your screen, fantasy points to the quarterback spot, 23rd, so that is the 10th fewest. Jalen Hurts for Philly against New Orleans. New Orleans sits at 21, so right in the same range. I feel like I would be going with Hurts here, as good as Kyler Murray is. The injury concern still lingers there for Murray, and not knowing if he's perhaps not 100% and still even trying to play. It sounds like he may play anyway. I might still stay away and go with Hurts in this situation. Shepard or Claypool, Giants, Sterling, Shepard. Matchup here, let's see, Tampa Bay on the left side of your screen sits at number 12, and Chase Claypool for Pittsburgh against the Chargers. That's Sunday night at 8:20. The good news is you're going to be able to wait to see what reports you get on Claypool here because of the obvious injury concerns there. The Chargers at 31st, second fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. I would normally pick Claypool over Shepard here, but I think the injury concern is going to make this decision for you most likely. If there is any concern that Claypool is either out or playing at less than 100%, then that is probably enough to push you towards Sterling Shepard's side of this, even though I don't really trust the Giants offense quite as much. And the last one, Jarvis, Landry, or Christian Kirk. Landry, Cleveland. That is, where does Cleveland? That's a 1 o'clock against Detroit at home. Detroit currently sits at 19 on the list on the left side of your screen there. Christian Kirk for Arizona, 425 again Sunday. Seattle currently sits at 24. Again, this is a Baker Mayfield thing. If Mayfield plays, you feel better about going with Landry. Again, the same thing with Murray in terms of going with Kirk. That has a lot to do with DeAndre Hopkins. So that's going to be another one where you're going to have to look for some of those reports. My instinct says Landry here either way. Especially if Hopkins is back or especially if Murray doesn't look like he's going to play. I think Landry would get you at least the volume, especially if you're playing PPR, that might get you there. And you say that you could start one for each. And hopefully that information does help you out. We got about 5 minutes to game time, so let's roll through these really fast, go into the lightning round, and then after that, we will talk about the wide receiver trade targets for those of you that want to stick around for that, or if you're watching on replay, we will do that next. Your boy Mari is here. Welcome back, one of our regulars. You say, should I start Wayne Gallman? I will say this. To me, it depends on what your other options here. If you have a decent option, I don't know if I would take that chance, but if you are in a bad spot, I do think there is a chance that tonight we see Wayne Gallman get some action, potentially even more involvement than Mike Davis. I'm worried. I have Mike Davis in a couple of spots this week, and I do not believe that I'm going to start him. That was actually one of the things that I was going to take a look at before game time here, which I won't be able to do since I'm live streaming. But I probably will actually call it up on my other screen just to make sure that there's nothing else that I don't want to take a look at. But I'm very hesitant on Mike Davis. It's one of these things where either Davis or Gallman, I feel like if you have a viable option instead of that player, I think you go the other way because of the concern. But if you're stuck in a bad spot, I do think there is a chance you could have a game from Wayne Gallman. There probably is equally as much of a chance that Gallman just doesn't see the volume that he saw last week as well. So that's what makes it a little bit tough, but there is some potential there if you absolutely have to go that way. Hope that helps you out, your boy Mari. That is the best way that I can put it in terms of how you make that decision tonight, and hope that whichever way you go there, hope that those players crush it for you. Drunk Squidward is here, one of our regulars. Welcome back. I use welcome back drunk like it's a first name, but Drunk Squidward is here. Glad to have you on the stream. Do you think I can try to trade for DK Metcalf for Scary Terry and Corey Davis? Let me do this, Drunk. Let me get through let me see if there are any other questions here about tonight's game first before I hit those, because I do want to make sure I will come back to your chat once game time starts. I do want to make sure if anybody needs a quick question for tonight's game that I get those in. And I do see DJ Goss is here. Welcome back to the stream. I do believe you've been with us before, DJ, so glad to have you with us tonight. You say, how do you feel about Stevenson tonight with Harris back, or should I go with Mike Davis, who isn't consistent? Which should I start? Again, yeah, this is a tough one. Of these two guys, I probably already kind of in a roundabout way answered this, but I'll put the matchups numbers up again. Stevenson for New England against Atlanta, the matchup is better at 5. Davis against New England, the matchup is not as good. New England at, where did I find them? 15th, still middle of the road. But I do feel like of the two, there are questions with both. I think the questions are worse for Stevenson than they are for Davis. I don't know if I said Harris before. I meant to say Davis. The Davis matchup is 15. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I get talking so fast on these live streams that I start to go crazy. But at any rate, I think if you have to pick between these two, I think it's probably Davis that seems to be more likely to have the amount of volume that you need to potentially give you a nice game than Stevenson. I think that this is going to be one of those deals where there could be a surprise, as I've said before, on either side. So I think you're kind of purely going with which side do you feel like is least likely to have a surprise. I would think it's less likely to be surprised that Mike Davis doesn't get enough work than it would be to be surprised that Stevenson does. If that makes sense, I would probably look towards Mike Davis in this particular situation, and then you're going to be just holding your breath along with everybody else that's playing those players in these games. Hope that helps you out there, DJ. Whichever guy you go over there, I hope that they do crush it for you. Let's see. Bars in the Tuck is here with a question for tonight. What's a better welcome back, Bars in the Tuck. Again, another one of our regulars. Couple minutes to game time. What's a better option? Starting both Harris and Stevenson or sitting both? I have Darrell Williams, CEH, Howard, Bateman, and Pollard as options. The Darrell Williams CEH thing is tough too, because hard to say if they're going to stick with Williams or roll back to CEH there. I don't think Howard is a better option. I like Bateman as an option. I would at least roll with, especially if this is PPR, I would at least favor rolling with Bateman over one of these guys. And then again, I think I've kind of already answered the other part of this. If you have to pick one in this game, you're Damian Harris. No, absolutely. Damian Harris is the guy here. I would trust that I'd feel way less hesitant about Harris not getting the work than I do about Stevenson not getting the work. Again, Williams CEH, you don't know, but you'll be able to get more information later on. I think you roll with Harris as the only player that you start tonight, and then you adjust and make the rest of your decisions moving forward from there. Hope that helps you out there, Bars in the Tuck. Let me roll quick here. Let me see who else. Kirk over Myers, that is for tonight. Matchups really quick. Wide receivers, Christian Kirk, Arizona, Seattle. Seattle sits at 24. The Myers matchup against Atlanta. Atlanta sits at 8. I think I go with Myers. I'd be concerned about I don't think there's enough to go with Kirk not knowing if Murray is healthy to start him over Myers tonight. So if you've been rolling with Myers all along, I would stay with him here. Let's see who else is here tonight. Ramondre, Gallman, Davis, or Foreman. I would probably, out of these guys, pick Davis. And in second place, I would, believe it or not, might go with Foreman. A great matchup against Houston tonight. That is all of you in the lightning round that are on the chat right now with questions for tonight. So I hope that I helped you out on all those first and foremost. And then now let me jump back to more of the overall questions that necessarily aren't related to tonight. Of course, if any of you have other questions, feel free to jump in the chat. Again, we still have a whole section of content to go through tonight regarding the wide receivers to target in trades. We will do that after we get through some more of these chats. Do want to make sure and get that content for you guys. Let's see, where am I at next in the line? Again, if I missed anybody, please let me know. I don't mean to miss anyone. Sometimes it happens. I will jump back and get them. Just tell me, hey, Joe, you missed mine, and I'll go back. Drunk Squidward, do you think I can try to trade for DK Metcalf for Scary Terry and Corey Davis? I think this certainly is a trade that you could look to try and make. I think it's always difficult when you're trading the same spot to get the value that you need. I think it's more likely that you could find trades when you're trading a running back for a wide receiver or vice versa. Scary Terry and Corey Davis, if you're able to make this deal, the player that has DK is you're going to have to take a look at their roster and find out, who is their second? If DK Metcalf is their number one wide receiver, who is their second? If they have a viable second already, then I feel like it's less likely they're going to make this trade. But if they're hurting for depth at the wide receiver spot, then what you're offering them is depth that they don't currently have. And that adds to the value in your deal. So the answer to this question is more about the person that has DK Metcalf in your league already. I think if they already have good depth, I think they're going to be less likely because to me, the best player in this deal is Metcalf, although I like Scary Terry a lot. And Corey Davis sneak preview is one of the players that I actually have on my list. So Drunk Squidward, you might want to stick around to watch the rest of the information that I have on the players to trade for, because I actually have Corey Davis listed as a player to trade for based on his playoff run. So that might help you out some as well. But again, if it's going to come down to, this is a straight answer of what does that person have. I doubt that if they have depth already, they're probably not going to trade away the best player. But if they need depth, then you have a chance. I think that's the best way that I can answer that there. I hope that helps you out there, Drunk Squidward. Next up is F. Welcome to the stream, F. I do believe this is the first time we've seen you here, so glad to have you with us tonight. You say I traded away Aaron Jones and Deante Johnson for David Montgomery and Brandon Cooks. I know it sounds bad, but I love Aaron for the rest of the season as I'm on the downside on Aaron Jones. And you say also, will CMC be good for the rest of the season? And Terry needs to step it up. I do agree. I do think better things are possible for Terry McLaurin. I do think he's a great player. And unfortunately, he's had so many different quarterbacks there in Washington. I don't think he's really been able to showcase his talents. We are almost underway in the game. We'll keep going through the chats for those of you that are still on with us. Again, this situation here, I think Aaron Jones is still going to be fine. Obviously, we don't ever want to see anybody get injured, but that is the situation that's going to be. I think he's certainly in line to continue to be a good player moving forward. Let me just take a look at his run of games here as we project out his matchups moving forward. It does sound like they were looking at like a potentially 2-week injury for Aaron Jones here. So hopefully after that, he's good to go as you look to move towards your playoff run. In terms of matchups, he has, as you know, like on Yahoo, when we talk about the red and the green matchups mean it's good, top 10 for Yahoo, and the red means it's bottom 10. He has no matchups in the red the rest of the way at all this season. Unfortunately, he also has no matchups in the green, which means a lot of middle-of-the-road matchups the rest of the way through. So in his playoff run, 15, 16, and 17, you've got Baltimore, and Baltimore currently allowing the 12th most fantasy points to running backs. Cleveland, 13th fewest, so that means they sit at number 20. And then Minnesota in week 17, which for most of you is your championship week, giving up the 11th most fantasy points to the running back spot. So I think the matchups are fine there. I think what concerns you most about Jones is the trend that we've seen with A.J. Dillon starting to get more work when both of them are healthy. If A.J. Dillon has a couple of great games with Jones out, he's probably going to earn even more time which might turn it into a little bit more of a timeshare. So that might hurt you a little bit for volume, but it doesn't hurt you for talent. I think Aaron Jones is a super talented player. I would be happy to have him in my lineup any day of the week. So I'm with you there. I think that if you like Aaron Jones, I think you're still in good shape there. No, I'm sorry. What am I saying here? If you traded away Aaron Jones, see, this is what happens. Montgomery and Cooks, boy, that trade-off is just fine. Montgomery, again, is a player that I have on my list in terms of players to trade for. As we look through, he was actually the number 2 guy that I had on the list here. His playoff run, Minnesota, 11th most fantasy points to the running back spot in week 15. Seattle in week 16, the 2nd most, and the Giants in week 17 are the 7th most. So if that is your playoff run, that is even a better run of matchups than we had for Jones. And again, you're not going to have the concerns over volume between Jones and Dillon. So I think that is in your favor here. Again, you probably would take Aaron Jones as a higher tier player most of the time over David Montgomery. So actually you did pretty well in this deal. And Brandon Cooks has been pretty good this season. Although again, you think Deante Johnson at least in the same tier as Brandon Cooks, potentially above, because you kind of trust the Pittsburgh offense most of the time more than Houston. But Houston, having to throw the ball as much as they do in the games that they've trailed in, Cooks is currently wide receiver 21 for the year, averaging 14.8. And let's see, where does Deontay Johnson sits at 22? So right in the same line, averaging 16.6. The average a little bit higher for Johnson. Cooks has played one more game than Johnson overall. So I think that probably the edge goes slightly to Johnson there, but I don't know that it's an awful trade. I think Brandon Cooks will be fine for you in your roster. He's been seeing plenty of volume, so I don't think this is a bad deal for you at all, F. I think you did just fine, especially with the injury concerns to Aaron Jones and if that might linger. And let me see, are there any follow-ups here from you, F? Yeah, I did have the one follow-up about CMC. I think he'll be fine. He got through that game now. He seems to be all right. The change at quarterback could potentially mean that their offense is a little bit more potent with Cam, possibly, which should mean more opportunity for goal line work for McCaffrey as long as Cam doesn't steal it away from him. I think if you got CMC, you've made it this far. Now he's back. Get ready, strap it up, and let's let him, bring you to the playoffs at this point. That's what you got to hope for if you have CMC. Hope that helps you out there, F. And glad to have you with us on the stream tonight. LeBron's Brain is back with us, one of our regulars again. LeBron's Brain. You say, do you think Chubb misses this game? I mean, again, it's kind of hard to tell. Again, we never want anybody to be in this situation with these protocols. And obviously, first off, we hope that he's healthy and okay. It seems like the players who have been in those protocols have been able to get back and play within a reasonable amount of time. I would have thought going into this week that would be the situation, but I don't think we've seen anything change in terms of his status as of yet. So hopefully, I know I have Nick Chubb in a couple of spots myself this year. Hopefully he does get back and play. It does seem like there has been enough time that he would be able to, but I don't know that there's any way we can really tell for sure on that one. But I'm with you, LeBron's Brain. It's hopeful that Nick Chubb is back for this one. Bill Romanowski says, okay, right on. Thanks, man, to a previous answer. And again, Bill, glad to have you. All of you regulars that are with us, glad to have you back with us. Let me see who is next up that I haven't got yet. Again, if I miss anybody, it is not intentional. I'm skipping around even more than normal tonight. Drunk Squidward says Myles Gaskin or Sterling Shepard for a flex spot. Let's take a look at some matchups here to help you out. Myles Gaskin for the Miami Dolphins road game against the Jets Sunday at 1:00, and fantasy points to the running back spot on the left side of your screen. The Jets are number 1 most fantasy points to the running back spot. Sterling Shepard for wide receivers, the New York Giants against Tampa Bay Monday night. Tampa Bay fantasy points to wide receivers at 12. I, a lot of times, like to have a flex running back in my flex spot. I feel like that gives you more consistent production. So therefore, Gaskin would be that guy. Obviously, Gaskin has been very up and down this year. He has been more consistent in terms of his volume since the unfortunate injury to Malcolm Brown. Keep an eye on your reports. If for some reason Malcolm Brown is back this week, I don't know his status. That does kind of change your outlook on Gaskin, because I do think that they will probably go back to what they were kind of doing with Brown, Gaskin, Salvon Ahmed. Sterling Shepard has not been, his consistency and his injury concerns are question marks for you. He hasn't played consecutive games since week 2 and 3 this year. Coming off the bye, you would hope that he has had some time to rest. I try to see if there are any notifications here. Sterling Shepard, this is not on Yahoo, a different platform. This is Giants beat writer Zach Rosenblatt says Sterling Shepard worked with trainers during New York's Thursday practice, which I guess from what this says means that he did not practice and only was working on the side. It's not looking like a good report there. So all of those things at this point, now that could change before Sunday, but all those things at this point would make me lean towards Gaskin for all of those reasons, especially the good matchup there. The only thing that might make me lean away is, like I said, keep an eye on your reports for Malcolm Brown. I think that does play a little bit of a role in the decision for you, but it could even possibly still be enough to keep you with Gaskin based on the status of Shepard there. MB was up next. I think we got that one for you, MB. Again, thank you for the chat. Zechariah's Aviation Channel. I hope that I am saying that your first name there right. It looks like Zechariah to me. You say thanks definitely helps. I'll feel free to come back. And as always, when you guys say thanks, I always like to thank you guys right back because really we do these shows for you. So we hope that you guys enjoy the chats. You guys make the show by being on here and being a part of this. So glad to have you with us, Zechariah. Bill Romanowski says, smash that like button. Let's get a win this week. Thank you, Bill. I do appreciate you saying that there for us. All the likes and the subscribes, they really do help out the channel a ton. Drunk Squidward, they have DK on their flex, and they also have A.J. Brown and Deante Johnson and DJ Moore on the bench. So, yeah, I would think that being the case, they're not going to be in a situation. We talked about this trade before for those of you that didn't hear this part. They don't need depth. So, in a 2-for-1 where you're offering 2 receivers for 1, that's really the biggest piece of value that they would be getting from this deal would be the depth. They're fine at that point. So they're probably going to want to hold on to their top guys. I think they would be more likely to trade away a lower down player, given the players that they do have there. I'm going to guess, Drunk Squidward, that this might be a smaller league, like an 8-team possibly league, if they're playing DK as their flex. Again, unless you mean that A.J. Brown and Deontay Johnson are their 1 and 2, possibly a 10-team league. DJ Moore is certainly right up there for his potential as well. I think that it's more likely that you could get one of his lower guys than one of his top guys. You might not have to offer 2 players in order to do that. Again, I do think sometimes you're going to have and you do say yes, an 8-man PPR league. I think you might have a chance here at, if you're simply looking to upgrade. How are you at the running back spot? I guess is my question. Are you needing help at running back, or do you have depth at running back? What they usually will say is trade your strength. And that means if you have a lot of great players at running back, obviously you're looking for some help at wide receiver if you're trying to acquire a guy like DK Metcalf. If you are strong at running back, I feel like you might have a better chance at getting one of these players by taking one of those players and trying to offer him in a deal, either a 1-for-1, or you could even try to make it a 2-for-1 with a running back along with your Scary Terry or your Corey Davis. I do think, again, based on the players that I have listed for the players to trade for, Corey Davis is a very nice trade piece for the rest of this season. And I do think he's a piece that you should be trying to acquire. So that is some potential to look for. That person might be interested in that. That could help you out. But I do think you have a better chance of putting a running back together there. Perhaps you have a 1-for-1. And again, when you're talking about a trade, basically, if you're close in terms of the running backs that you have, if they're very close, then really what you want to do is, difficult as it sounds to trade away one of your top guys, you're trading away whoever it is you feel like you can get the most value back from. So if you have 4 good running backs, trying to trade the number 4 of them most likely is only going to get you the number 4 of this guy's, and not necessarily as high up as you might want to get for a DK. But you might be able to swing a deal like that for a DJ Moore, who they might be a little concerned about with the quarterback play there, or Deontay Johnson, or even A.J. Brown. All these guys have some questions. Let me see what your follow-up is here. I don't have depth. I have Austin Eckler and Leonard Fournette as starters. Do need a wide receiver. Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the situation where it might be in a tough spot here, because I do think that perhaps there is somebody else in the league other than this particular person who might need more depth at the wide receiver spot. I might look for that in terms of if you are trying to offer those 2 players to get one back, you really have to, if that is the deal that you're looking for, you really have to kind of look for that team that does need some added depth. And I don't think that's necessarily going to be the team that has the DK run that you had. But hope that helps you out there. Let us know, Drunk Squidward, how this works out for you on future live streams. I know that you've been back with us many times. So I do hope that helps out with you, with your thoughts there. And in terms of wherever you take it, hope whichever guys that you were able to acquire, hope that they crush it for you moving forward. Vansco is back, one of our regulars tonight. Thank you, Drunk Squitter, for the chats. Vansco, I'm probably going to start Gaskin this week against the Jets out of necessity. Well, Vansco, I know how you felt about Gaskin this year. It's been a roller coaster ride for you, but I do think that the matchup is there. As we kind of said before, there are going to be some times that Myles Gaskin is in play. I do think that this is one of them. Hope that works out there. I see some more from Vansco, but I'm going to jump to this one from Easy Money Sicilian. Unfortunately, I know that the game, I don't know if this was a question where you were looking to figure out who to start, but it looks like the chat was at 8:28, so this game would have already started. So I hope that whichever way you went works out for you. But you do ask, again, welcome back, Easy Money Sicilian. How do you feel about Ramondre tonight? Patterson hurt. I think Ramondre Stevenson is not going to be on the good side of that backfield committee for New England. That's my expectation. I think Damian Harris is going to walk in that door and take back the work. I will say this, expected to play. I just looked on another platform. I did not even realize that Brandon Bolden was perhaps, they have him on the expected to play list, which means he must have been a little bit banged up. Either way, I would think that it's going to be Harris in terms of the rush game and Bolden in terms of the pass catching game. And even as I look at what's happened so far, Harris with 2 rushes, Bolden with 1, and nothing yet for Stevenson. I do think that's going to be the way it's going to go tonight. I don't expect big things from Ramondre Stevenson, even though it's a good matchup. If you did have to go with him and play him, you're going to be touchdown dependent. You're going to have to hope he breaks something off. Given less volume is what I expect. He's going to have to make something of whatever he does get tonight. Hope that helps you out there. Easy Money Sicilian. Vansco, in my important leagues, I'm 7-3, 5-5, 5-5, 5-5. I'm consistent at least. Just need a little bit of luck on the playoff push, as with any of us. Those are not bad records. A 5-5 record can be a great record if you're in 4th place, or it can be a tough record if the person in 4th place is 7-3. There's a lot of different situations that you can have there, but I know one of the things that I heard, I think it was earlier this year, was sometimes the record isn't the only thing to look at. It's the points as well. So a 5-5 record with a points lead on the people, like if the teams at 6-4 have a significant amount less points than you, then you are in not that bad of a spot, only to need to make up one game, because all you got to do is make up that one win and you take the lead there. So there's a lot of potential, Vansco. I know you will keep working. You say here, luckily only about a game out in most leagues, so not a bad situation. All we can do is keep working, Vansco, and making our way towards those playoffs. That's all we can do in fantasy football, and I know you guys are out there doing that, doing your homework. All right, Vansco, thank you for the chat. Thank you all for the chats. I do see that I'm caught up on the chats. I will put up this quick notification before I move forward to more of our content. The live chat will remain open for a little while. We will stick this for a little while. We do have some more content to go through for those of you that have been watching on replay, talking about trade targets, and we will get to that next. If there are any more chats, then I will jump back over to them afterwards. We already talked about trade targets at the running back spot. So let's talk about the wide receiver spot. And the basis of the players that I have looked at on these on this list are players who have the best matchups during your playoff run. And that would be the reason to target them in trades, given the fact that, especially if you are a team that already feels good about your playoff chances, you want to make sure that you have some nice matchups once you get to those important games at the end of the season. So these are players that I have identified as having nice stretch of matchups down the run that can help you once you get to those playoffs move towards that win in your fantasy football championship. So at the wide receiver spot, again, I kind of ordered these in terms of where I felt they were in terms of value. The first on this list is DeAndre Hopkins. Not only does he have a nice run, but DeAndre Hopkins is a little bit of a buy low candidate even this late into the season. He certainly hasn't returned, both due to some of the play in Arizona and due to his obvious unfortunate injury concerns there. He has not returned quite as much value to the team who has been rostering him at this point, which means he's a person that you might be able to go out and get. And I will say this, I actually just traded away DeAndre Hopkins in one of my leagues. This is a player that I was actually looking to trade away myself. And the trade that I was looking for, I ended up actually getting the offer, which was pretty much exactly the offer that I was going to make anyway. So this was a good spot, and I think there are good spots to be had in terms of involving trade with DeAndre Hopkins. He is currently wide receiver 26. He's averaging 15.7 fantasy points for the year. Obviously, as I said, he's missed some time. But the basis of what we're talking about here is the playoff run. So on your graphic there, you see weeks 15 through 17. We know that most of your playoffs are weeks 15, 16, and 17, or some of you 16 and 17 only. So here are the matchups in those weeks. Detroit, Indianapolis, Dallas, and then if you happen to play through to week 18, it's Seattle for Hopkins. Fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver spot by those teams. Detroit at number 19, just below halfway, but then Indianapolis at 5, Dallas at 13, right around halfway, and then Seattle is 24. Certainly, DeAndre Hopkins is the type of player who is able to overcome tougher matchups. So you've got one real great matchup with Indianapolis at 5 in week 16, which is potentially the first week of your playoffs. The others are middle of the road. Guy that's as good as Hopkins, I mean, that's going to be just fine for him. I think this is a player who you can look to target as we approach the trade deadline and perhaps make a deal to somebody who might feel like they need to get somebody back at this point after struggling through the season they've had so far. So I think DeAndre Hopkins is the first guy on my list that I would look for in terms of trade thoughts as we look towards the trade deadline here. Second up at the wide receiver spot is Jalen Waddle from the Miami Dolphins. Waddle currently wide receiver 24 for the season overall in terms of fantasy points scored, averaging 13.2. Again, we're talking about the playoff run of games and who has the best matchups. Therefore, if you make that trade, you can expect to have a good run as you make your way towards your championship. For Waddle, it is the Jets, the New Orleans Saints, and then Tennessee. And then in week 18, which I don't put on the graphic because it's not quite as common, I would think, that you're playing in week 18, but just in case, it is New England. Fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver spot by those teams. The Jets at 14. The Saints in week 16 are number 6. And the Tennessee Titans in week 17 for your fantasy football championship are number 1, the most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver spot. So, again, as we talked about with the running backs on this list, different players will require a different level that you will have to offer to get this guy. DeAndre Hopkins, you're going to have to offer a little bit more, but a Jalen Waddle is a guy who you might not have to offer quite as much for. So if you have depth, in particular at the running back spot, you might not even have to give away one of your top running backs to get a Waddle, or you could package a 2-for-1. These are options for you to get a guy back that has great matchups for your playoff run. Next up on the list, I've got Amari Cooper for the Dallas Cowboys. I moved Cooper down to 3 in this situation because I think Cooper might be a player that might be difficult to get in a trade at this point. I don't know if there are a lot of concerns that would make somebody kind of ship him away. And CeeDee Lamb obviously has the same matchups as Cooper. I for sure think that picking up CeeDee Lamb is not going to be that easy. So that kind of determined who I put on this list and who I didn't. Obviously, there are players that are not on this list that I just simply felt like, you know what, it's not very likely that someone's going to trade them away. So I'd rather talk about guys that I feel like is possible for you to get. Cooper is kind of in the middle of the road, I think, when it comes to this situation. He's currently wide receiver 23 for the year, averaging 14.7. And you see his matchups there in week 15, 16, and 17. The New York Giants, the Washington football team, and then the Arizona Cardinals with week 18 against Philadelphia Eagles. The matchup numbers for those 3 games there that you see, New York currently allowing the 17th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot, right in the middle. Washington at number 2. So for the first or potentially second week of your playoffs, a great matchup there. And then Arizona is at 21. So that's actually the 12th fewest. Again, Amari Cooper is a pretty top talent. So you feel less hesitant about matchups that aren't quite as good when you're starting a guy like Cooper. I do think he's a guy you can go out and look for and perhaps see if you can make an offer that gets you Amari Cooper as you look towards your stretch run. Next up, we got Devonta Smith from the Philadelphia Eagles on this list. Again, a player that might be a little bit more possible to acquire at this point without giving up quite as much. Smith currently wide receiver 25 for the season, averaging 12.6 fantasy points. And there you see his matchups. 2 matchups with the Washington football team, who are currently allowing the second most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. And then the Giants in week 16 at number 17. And then if you are playing in week 18, it's Dallas sitting at number 13. So some nice matchups there for Devonta Smith. Been a little bit up and down this season, but played a little bit better of late. I do think he's a player that you can go out and look for as a potential flex player in terms of acquiring by trade. Deante Johnson, we talked about him some tonight during the chats. I think Johnson is certainly one of those players that you can look for in terms of trying to acquire. He's currently wide receiver 22, averaging 16.6 fantasy points for the season. A nice run during your playoff stretch there. In week 15, Tennessee allowing the very most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot right now. The Chiefs in week 16 sit at 18, right in the middle, and then Cleveland is number 9 in week 17. In week 18, he does have Baltimore, who is 23, so it's a little bit lower down. But again, some nice matchups there. Your championship week in week 17, a good matchup. These are the things we're talking about when we're looking at trading for these players to see where they're going to be at. So, for sure, if you're going to acquire somebody, you want to make sure that they can get you what you need once you get to that playoff run. Next up, I've got Corey Davis from the New York Jets. We talked about a little bit tonight already during the chats. Again, Corey Davis, this is a guy that falls in the line of, can you get this guy and offer a little bit less without giving up one of your top players? Probably. And then does Corey Davis give you an option that you can slot in based on those matchups if you need somebody in that flex spot to get you that W? Davis currently wide receiver 40 for the year, obviously has missed some time, averaging 13.6 for the season. Great playoff run. Week 15 in Miami allowing the third most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. Week 16, Jacksonville at number 10. And then week 17, Tampa Bay at number 12. They've got the Buffalo Bills in week 18, who are in last if you are happening to be playing until week 18. But I think Corey Davis is a player who does offer you some potential as we get towards that stretch of the season. You could go out and take a look and see if somebody might be able to get rid of him and just add that to your depth as you move forward. Next up here, we've already talked about Johnson with the matchups. Same matchups here for Chase Claypool. Again, I do think this is a player who gives you some options once you get to that part of the season. And again, the matchups are really good. Tennessee number 1 in week 15 and Cleveland number 9 in week 17. Again, a player you might not have to offer quite as much for in terms of getting that trade. And then last on this list, despite the up and down play, Brandon Ayuk for the 49ers. He is currently wide receiver 71. The expectations were so much greater for Ayuk this year. He's averaging 6.7. His average is down mostly because of the fact that he's been active, kind of, in a lot of games where basically it was just like, okay, Brandon, go out there and be on the field and we'll see when the game's over. I mean, that's pretty much all it's been for a lot of these games. It has looked to turn around as of late. And that's why I think Brandon Ayuk falls on this list. Again, there's a good chance whoever has Brandon Ayuk is so sick of him at this point. They're like, yeah, whatever, trade me a bag of footballs. You might be able to get this deal. And if it does work out, he's kind of a flyer that could help you out at the end of the season. Again, it has been a roller coaster. I get it. But in terms of the matchups, Atlanta, week 15, the 8th most fantasy points to wide receiver spot. Tennessee in week 16, number 1. And Houston in week 17, the 11th most fantasy points to the wide receiver spot. In week 18, it's the Rams, 22nd, so that's 11th fewest. But again, most of you are playing 15, 16, 17, or 16 and 17. A guy that could potentially have some value for you on your team. You'll know by the time you get to your playoffs whether you can trust him or not. If you can get him without giving up too much, then you have him there to use. And if he doesn't work out, then you haven't given up, your main players and you're still in decent shape. So I think Brandon Ayuk warrants some consideration in terms of a guy to go out there and trade. That is our list of trade thoughts as we approach for most of you the trade deadline this week in your fantasy football leagues. We gave you the running backs. We gave you the wide receivers. Hopefully some of that information helps you out in terms of if you're looking to go out there and target different players to add to your roster as you get closer towards the end of the season here. Again, we've got a couple more chats to go through. We will get through the rest of these chats before we wrap up the stream for tonight. Let me see who else is up here next here. Drunk Squidward is up here and says, thanks for answering questions. Appreciate it. And as I always say, when you guys say thanks, I like to say thanks right back. Again, you guys do make the show by being a part. So glad to have you with us again, Drunk Squidward. Vansco, I've been offered James Conner for Aaron Jones. Interesting thought here. You're going to probably get a couple of weeks of really good production from Conner. And then hard to say what happens for Aaron Jones when he's back from injury. If he continues to have the good side of the timeshare or if it's more of a straight split for Jones. So interesting one to consider here, Vansco. I guess that depends on whether or not this league is a league where you need to scratch and claw to the playoffs or if you're already in the playoffs. I think it's let's see. You also say I was also offered Josh Jacobs for Aaron Jones. I might like that one a little more of the two. And you say I'd like to move on from him, but it's hard to trade him even with the frustration. I think, Vansco, if I had to pick one of these two deals, if you were going to do one, it would be this one. Simply because I think Josh Jacobs, you're looking at a longer run. I think that when Chase Edmonds is healthy again, you're likely going to see James Conner going back to what he was. which not that it hasn't been productive, but you always are running the risk of being on the wrong side of that timeshare. You don't get the free PPR value that Chase Edmonds does. And if it's still a situation where Arizona's playing great and winning a lot of their games, then game script means that, Connor's going to be in play a lot of the time anyway. But in the situation where it isn't that way, then you are running the risk of seeing less involvement from Connor. I think that's kind of why. I know on an earlier live stream I had read one of the reports from Yahoo, and this gets back to what I was saying about I like Yahoo for their reports when it comes to injuries, but I'm not always on board with their thoughts. I mean, they had this was earlier in the season, they had some sort of a thought about James Conner saying that it's only about his touchdowns. He doesn't have any value for your team. I don't know if that's the exact words, but it was something like that. And I read that and I was like, James Conner's played pretty well this year. I just didn't think that was necessarily accurate, but I do think it wasn't accurate in terms of being that negative, but I do think in terms of the concerns of when he could lose out on work, I think that is accurate. And it's just simply that Arizona has been the team that's played so well this year that he's been able to continue that involvement. If they happen to run into a stretch where they were playing from behind a lot more, I think that would impact him. Whereas Jacobs, I think, is a little bit more game script proof in that way. I think it's going to be I think he's going to reasonably have the work either way. Yes, Kenyon Drake will probably work in more if there are games that he's trailing, but I don't think that means that he's not going to see in other words, if you had to put him 1A and 1B, Connor's going to be 1B and Jacobs is going to be 1A. And therefore you always expect the 1A to have a better opportunity to get that volume. The 1B more dependent on the game script in both of those situations. So I think Vansco, I think it's reasonable. To me, Aaron Jones over either one of those guys is a big step up in ability, a big step up in tiers. I think clearly that's Aaron Jones, who is the higher tier player of both of those. I would think that if you are interested in taking either one of these deals, it would probably be a situation where you might make a counter offer to the person who offered the deal and ask for another piece back to add to your depth. Perhaps you like the James Conner side, then you might just be, hey, give me James Conner plus, this guy that you have at tight end that's not your starter. If you have two good tight ends and perhaps you need a little depth at your tight end spot, or send me, this other wide receiver that's your flex wide receiver who you have extra depth there or something like that. I think that would be the thought, because it seems like, Vansco, if you were enthralled by this deal, you probably would have already made it. And so if that means the hesitation is real, then it might not be enough to say, yes, I'm going to do it. But if you could add a piece that might make you feel a little bit better about it, and the person that's making the offer might be just fine with adding that piece. So I think at the very least, if you're considering saying no, then, shoot them back an offer that would make it be a yes for you, and just see, what they say. I mean, not like I'm telling you anything you don't know, Vansco, but those are just kind of my thoughts, that I think if it's close enough for you, that perhaps there is something else on your roster that could help you in terms of depth moving forward that you could add to that. I would think that would be my thought if you were going to try to make this deal. But as I always say, Vansco, whichever way you go with these, whichever guys you end up with, I hope that they do crush it for you. Here's your follow-up. You say, here's the thing. I have Zeke and Henderson. I'm not exactly in a terrible need, though I'd like Aaron to put up RB1 numbers. Yeah, this is similar to one of the other chats that I had tonight talking about the trade for DK Metcalf. So you're in a situation where you already have good players there. So what would be to me, you don't need, I'm guessing, unless you absolutely need this running back to be in your flex, because Jones being out, obviously. But if you have the depth at your wide receivers in this league that you're able to fill that flex spot and just use Zeke and Henderson on a bye this week. I guess that does make a difference there, right? Am I saying that right? Henderson is on a bye this week. So that does make a difference for you in 1 week. But overall, it seems like you have the players that you would need to be able to wait on Aaron Jones and hope that he returns you more value when he gets back than Josh Jacobs does or than James Conner does. I think it's very reasonable to think that he would return you more value than either of those guys. I mean, if you look at where they are right now in the standings, let me just call it up. Aaron Jones currently at RB6 for the year, averaging 16.1. James Conner currently at RB11, 11, averaging 14.8. And where do we find who's the other one I'm looking for here? Josh Jacobs, that's right. Josh Jacobs currently sits at, he's missed some time, so he's farther down the line. RB 28, he's averaging 13.9. So, clearly of those guys, the guy that's averaging the most and is the highest up on the overall standings is Aaron Jones right now. You would expect that to be at least reasonably close to that when he returns. If you were in a spot where, you absolutely had to get somebody this week, then that might be enough reason to make that change. If you're not in terrible need, then hey, ask for more. And if that guy that's asking really wants Aaron Jones, then he has to make that decision if he wants something else back. If there's nothing wrong with making a counteroffer that gets you more value. And if he says no, if you were already thinking about saying no to the deal, then what have you lost? If he says yes, and you're getting back, a tremendous amount, no, you're not going to offer, some of the offers that you get in these leagues, because we all get them, where people are just making you ridiculous offers. You're like, what is this? Like, nobody would ever take this deal. But I do think this is a situation where it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be a ridiculous offer in return, but it's just an offer that's asking for a little bit more, but enough more that gives you a better edge on your roster moving forward than you're getting. Because I don't know that you're necessarily getting all that much of an edge with either one of those two guys, Connor or Jacobs, than what you have in Jones. And you have the ability most likely to wait until he's back based on what you're saying here. So, yeah, I agree. It would be nice if Jones would put up those numbers, but I do think it's possible. Like I said, his matchups are pretty decent along the way through. When I looked them up before, I do believe there were not any matchups that were showing up on Yahoo in the red. So that's really very reasonable. And for the season, he's had 3 games under double digits all season long out of 10. So not like he hasn't had some great games. His average was bolstered, obviously, by that 42 fantasy point performance in week 2. But he's had a few other nice weeks, in addition to those. So if you went out and you drafted Aaron Jones that high, get back something that really is worth it. Don't feel like you have to say yes just to say yes. But if you can get a deal that for you is an absolute yes, it never hurts to ask for that deal. You just say, appreciate it. You've been a huge help per usual. As I always say, glad to have you guys on the stream, and always hope that all of you guys are able to continue working your way through the season and getting your ways through to your playoff time and your championships down the road. So glad to hear the nice words here, Vansco. And as always, hope that it does help out, and hope whichever guys that you go with there, hope that they do crush it for you. All right, we are all caught up on the chats. We've got all of our content out there. So before we close up the stream, let's take a look at a little bit of what's going on in this game so far. If any of you have some last-minute chats, feel free to jump in and drop them, and we will get them before we close up the stream. But as we take a look so far, it is a 3-0 game. New England leading the way. It doesn't look like a whole lot going on either side of the ball so far. For the Mike Davis questions that we had earlier, Davis with 1 rush attempt and 1 catch on 1 target for a whopping 0.70 fantasy points at this point. Wayne, I'm sorry, I'm looking in standard, so let me get this back into PPR, and that'll give me better numbers here. Davis at 1.70. Wayne Gallman at negative 0.30, and Quadre Allison, who I haven't heard that name in quite a while, and therefore haven't even tried to pronounce it in quite a while, but he's also apparently going to be in the mix here for rush attempts in the absence of Cordero Patterson. Who knows how that's going to shake out. It is New England with the ball right now, and a big run here for Damian Harris looks like on the New England side. Harris already with 3 rush attempts, and just add another one to the list there. Again, Ramondre Stevenson has 3. Harris now has 4. And Braden Bolden has 1 himself. No pass attempts to the backfield for New England at this point, but it does look like Harris is in there and rolling with the offense. So no real signs of him not being a factor. So hope that all of you who were in that situation of thinking about Stevenson, again, it still could go either way at this point. Hope it goes whichever way you need it to, I guess is the way I want to look at it. Jonnu Smith with some early involvement at the tight end spot there for New England. Back in the fold this week after being inactive last week. Hunter Henry, of course, is in there as well. Mac Jones, 6 pass attempts so far for 42 yards. And on the other side, Matt Ryan, you never know what you're going to get from Matt Ryan. 3 for 6 for 19 yards. This is going to be a tough one. When you look up and down what's on here, I mean, who is he going to throw the ball to? You still have to think that Kyle Pitts is involved, although perhaps New England is really focusing on Pitts in terms of the defensive side. That could be possible. But, man, when you look at the rest of the guys that are available to him here, I don't see how Atlanta wins this game. I think that's what it comes down to. I don't know how this isn't game script favoring New England by the time all is said and done, where they're able to run the ball with the lead most of the way. There simply are not a lot of targets out there for Matt Ryan, and at the same time, the rush game is this could be a ugly Thursday night one as we go through this one. But hopefully, fantasy wise, it gets you what you need. And we'll see what happens. End of the first quarter, 3-0 New England with the lead, and we'll see how the rest of it goes the rest of the way. We will wrap up the stream for tonight on a special TFF Live Thursday pregame show. We hope you enjoyed all of the trade thoughts, and hopefully that helps out some of you guys as you look forward to the rest of your season. Again, we thank those of you that have been with us on the live stream. For those of you that are watching on replay, as always, we like to say, if you are enjoying our content, feel free to drop us a like. And if you have not subscribed to the channel yet and you enjoy what we got going on here, please subscribe to the channel. The likes and the subscribes, they really do help out the channel a ton. Make sure you get those notifications to let you know when we have new content. And we appreciate all of you, of course, for being with us on our live streams. We will again promo real quick our 6 picks game. This is our thumbnail from last week. This is a weekly game, simply a game for you guys, the viewers, to enjoy. No cost or anything like that. But you're picking fantasy matchups that occur within the 6 games, 6 matchups to choose from. Not to choose from. You pick all 6. That's the way it works. And we keep the standings, and you're basically picking the players that you simply feel will have a better fantasy scoring day based on PPR scoring. We keep those standings all season long. And the picks close at 1 o'clock on Sunday each week. We have not totaled up Week 10 yet, but we will remind you of what happened in Week 9. It was Cash Money Wilson and Bobby Shmurda leading the way in Week 9. And the overall standings after 9 weeks see Vance go in the lead. We keep the standings by win percentage, understanding that different players will play a different amount of weeks. But right now, as of Week 9, it was with a minimum of 3 weeks. Vance go, Cash Money Wilson, and Bill Romanowski rounding out the leaderboard. Keep an eye on that 6 picks game, and good luck in that as well. We don't have the new video out yet, but obviously, we'll have a new batch of picks running for you for Week 11. That will wrap up our TFF Live Thursday pregame show. Enjoy the rest of the game and enjoy getting ready for the remainder of your Week 11 of fantasy football. And as we always say, good luck in fantasy. We'll see you next time.